And away we go. All right, so uh we're looking at Jesus's life in the four gospels. The references will be in today are behind me: Matthew 26, Mark 14, Luke 22, John 18. Uh, so the last time we were together, we talked about Jesus's arrest in Gethsemane. Um, he left there alone. All the disciples deserted him. They all ran for the hills. And the group that came to arrest him in Gethsemane is taking him back into the city where he will meet with the high priest. The group that came to meet with him is not just some Roman soldiers. It is some Roman soldiers who are probably more there as peacekeepers outside the garden than they are the actual arresting officers. But there are temple security guards there, the captains of the guard, as well as priests and elders of the people, and pretty much anybody else that they could get to come along with them. Um, so they will leave the Garden of Gethsemane and they will go back across the valley up into the city on their way to the home of the high priest. So we should talk about the four different accounts. So Matthew, which is chapter 26, starting in verse 57. And then Mark's account, which is in 14, starting in verse 53. Those two accounts track pretty much the same. There are a few subtle differences, but nothing really significant. Um, they really sort of follow the same pattern, the same path. Most of the language is exactly the same. Um, Luke's account has some of the details of Jesus's trial before some of the Jewish leadership, but he doesn't have it until after Peter's denial. That's in chapter 22, starting in verse 66. And then John's gospel, as usual, is way different than everybody else's because that's just the way John Boy rolls. His account has a very different focus than Matthew and Mark. It starts in chapter 18, verses 19 to 24. And the deal is that it probably is first. So we'll go there. So John 18, verses 19 through 24. Meanwhile, the high priest questioned Jesus about his disciples and his teaching. I have spoken openly to the world, Jesus replied. I always taught in synagogues or at the temple, where all the Jews come together. I said nothing in secret. Why question me? Ask those who heard me. Surely they know what I said. When Jesus said this, one of the officials nearby slapped him in the face. Is this the way you answer the high priest? He demanded. Jesus replied, if I said something wrong, testify as to what is wrong. But if I spoke the truth, why did you strike me? Then Annas sent him bound to Caiaphas, the high priest. Okay, so we talked a little bit about this last time. The acting high priest of uh, Judea was appointed, actually, while the Romans were in town. All of the high priests were appointed by the Roman government. Um, The high priest that we have heard the most about so far in the Gospels is named Caiaphas. He is the one who all along has been out to get Jesus, has been trying to find a way to eliminate him, and remove that threat. But here, John talks about going to see the high priest Annas. Does that mean they're contradictory? No, because Annas had served for several years already as the high priest. He was appointed earlier and then removed earlier by the Roman government in that position, which would have been sort of political as well as religious. The Romans are looking for somebody who will go along with whatever they want to do, who can keep the people happy, who will just keep the people from having a revolution. Annas fell out of favor and was removed by one of the earlier Roman rulers. Somebody else served, and then the next high priest is Caiaphas, who's put into place by the Roman government. Caiaphas happens to be, John tells us, the son-in-law of Annas. So it's like a religio-political dynasty. The Annas family is going to be in power. They've been in power for at least a couple of generations. They've got a lot of influence. I suppose that would be sort of like, I guess, like the Bushes, or if you go really far back, the Adams family. But Annas has served as high priest and is probably still very widely respected as the high priest, even though he does not have the official title now or the position, but his son-in-law Caiaphas does. I'm going to assume that Annas and Caiaphas are friendly and in cahoots and would agree with everything all along the way, based on what we see. So Annas is the high priest emeritus and still has a lot of power and influence. And maybe out of some respect for this old man, they take Jesus to him first for some questioning. And what does Annas focus his questions on in this short trial?
The disciples and his teaching.
The disciples and the teaching. Hey, what did you say about this? What did you say about that? Tell us some more about what you've taught. Jesus reminds them that everything that he has said has been totally public. It's been in the temple courts where all the Jews come. Everybody has heard him say these things. There's nothing in secret. There's nothing clandestine. There's nothing that would have been a great surprise. They know what Jesus has been teaching, and so he says, "Why am I being questioned? It's all a matter of public record. You can ask anybody in Jerusalem; they'll tell you what I said."
Well, they know because they arrested him for it.
Yeah. But apparently the leaders didn't like his tone. I don't see it as being particularly disrespectful or snide or snarky. Maybe it was, but it's interpreted as such. And so one of the officials comes up and slaps him across the face, trying to put him back in his place. This is not the way you talk to this esteemed political religious leader. You should have some more respect, dirty dog. That's sort of the undertone here. Jesus, as always, has spoken the truth. And so his question is, if I'm telling the truth, if I told you what you asked, why are you slapping me? Why are you hitting me? Because I've told the truth. Um, there's not a lot more to this first trial. I heard some preacher at some point talk about it being a night full of kangaroo court, where he just goes from one farce of a trial to the next. So this first one is pretty quick. It's in the home of Annas, who is the former high priest, the father-in-law of the current high priest. And when Annas can't get any more satisfaction, he just has him bound, tied up, and sends him off to the reigning high priest, Caiaphas. Um, like I said, Matthew and Mark's accounts are pretty close to being the same. So we're gonna go look at Mark 14, starting in verse 53. Mark 14:53. Yeah. They took Jesus to the high priest, and all the chief priests, the elders, and the teachers of the law came together. Peter followed him at a distance, right into the courtyard of the high priest. There he sat with the guards and warmed himself at the fire. The chief priests and the whole Sanhedrin were looking for evidence against Jesus so they could put him to death, but they did not find any. Many testified falsely against him, but their statements did not agree. Then some stood up and gave this false testimony against him. We heard him say, I will destroy the temple made with human's hands, and in 3 days will build another not made with hands. Yet even then their testimony did not agree. Then the high priest stood up before them and asked Jesus, Are you not going to answer? What is this testimony that these men are bringing against you? But Jesus remained silent and gave no answer. Again, the high priest asked him, Are you the Messiah, the Son of the Blessed One? I am, said Jesus, and you will see the Son of Man sitting at the right hand of the Mighty One and coming in the clouds of heaven. Then the high priest tore his clothes. Why do we need any more witnesses? They asked. You have heard the blasphemy. What do you think? They all condemned him as worthy of death. Then some began to spit at him. They blindfolded him, struck him with their fists, and said, Prophesy. And the guards took him and beat him. Okay, so Caiaphas's home, the palace of the high priest, is on the southwestern corner of the city. It's on the top of a hill, and it has an amazing view. If the place that is traditionally seen as his home really is the right place, it has a great view, kind of like about a 270-degree view of the Kidron Valley, the corner of the city, all the way around out to the south and to the west. It is estimated that this house is pretty big. And obviously, if you've got this kind of a group meeting in your home, it's a pretty big house because you've got the high priest, the chief priests, a bunch of the elders, a bunch of the teachers of the law, a bunch of temple guards, in addition to Jesus. So they are all packed into some kind of big space where they're having this second interrogation. Mark says that Peter had followed Jesus and his captors to the home of the high priest, and that he was sitting near the fire, waiting to see and hear the outcome. John tells us that it's not just Peter, but another disciple, probably himself, has also gone along to watch at a distance. Though the leadership is searching for some punishable offenses, there are really none given, at least none that are verifiable. They've had at least several days, if not weeks or months, to try to figure out how to get rid of Jesus. But when it comes right down to it, they can't pull it off. They've brought people in to be witnesses against Jesus, and everything that they say is contradictory. Um, to Mark tells us there is all of this false, contradictory information given. Their answers don't agree. And as I was thinking about that this week, I think that's important. What that says to me is that a court, that's in quotation marks, a court that is based on bias would not slow down for contradictory testimony. If everybody in the room has already got it out for Jesus, whatever is said is going to be good enough. But what's it say? The testimony doesn't agree. This tells me, and I don't think I'm reading too much in between the lines here, but it tells me that there are guys in that room who are not ready to find Jesus guilty and who are actually interested in finding out the truth. While the chief priest and the high priest and a lot of the leadership is hell bent on getting rid of Jesus for good, there are still some men in that group who will hear testimony and go, well, that's not what he just said. Their testimony doesn't agree. Is there anybody else? They bring up, well, he's a lousy witness because that clearly is a lie. I don't know that I've ever paid attention to that before, but it seems to me like that has to be the case, because why else would you mention the fact that there's false testimony being given? Because everybody is running him out on a rail. They'd all just agree. Am I up in the night here, or do you think that makes sense? There's resounding response from the congregation that yes, James, you are a brilliant man. This is incredible insight. Please give us more.
Obviously, they didn't care that there was contradictions.
Yeah, it's the vast majority of the men in that room don't. They're just going to keep pushing, but there are enough men who will stand for righteousness and truth to say you cannot execute him, because in a trial where you're moving for capital punishment, an executable offense, there had to be two corroborating witnesses, and with all the witnesses they bring up, they can't get to whose statements match.
That's why they take it to the Romans.
Well, sort of. It is clearly very frustrating to the high priest and the chief priest and the elders and the teachers of the law that these people are causing trouble on their lynch mob. They're trying to slow it down, and so the priest just gets right to it. Well, we should talk about this first. Jesus is being misquoted. In some of the testimony that's being given, they're bringing up details that weren't actually right. What's the accusation?
I will destroy this temple and build it up again.
This temple that was made with hands.
I'll destroy this handmade temple, and I will build another one without hands. Okay. Let's look to see where Jesus says that. Go back to Mark chapter 13.
Hello?
Hello, come in.
I'm sorry to interrupt, I just wanted to drop off a flyer really quick,
Okay.
and then I'll be out of here.
You're welcome
Let's
to
do it.
stay.
Done your Wednesday evening Bible studies before.
Okay. Awesome.
It's gonna just be a free Christian support group for
Okay.
people dealing with that kind of, oh,
Well, I appreciate that.
okay, thanks for letting
Thank
me.
What?
Yeah, back in Mark 13:2. Jesus and the disciples are around the temple. One of the disciples said to him, "Look, teacher, what massive stones, what magnificent buildings." Jesus replied, "Do you see all these great buildings? Not one stone here will be left on another. Every one will be thrown down." Huh. Okay, go back to John chapter 2. A long time ago.
This was all like 2,000 years ago. That's long ago.
About as long as we've been studying it. John, it's so hard to find anything in this wacky Bible. John 2:19. Jesus is cleaning the temple courts. He made a whip out of cords, drove them all from the temple. Get these out of here. Stop turning my father's house into a market. Jesus says in verse 19, in responding to them, when they say, "What sign can you show us to prove your authority to do all this?" He answered them, "Destroy this temple, I will raise it again in 3 days." It's taken 46 years to build this temple, and yet you're going to raise it in 3 days. That's what they got. And they get it wrong. Because Jesus doesn't say, "I'll destroy this temple." It says, "If you destroy this temple," in John 2. And in Mark 13, he says, "This temple is going to be destroyed. Not one stone is going to be left on another." He doesn't say he's going to do it. To threaten the temple probably would have been a big offense. I guess that'd be like threatening to blow up the White House, threaten to blow up the Supreme Court or Congress, as much as some people might dream of that. You can get arrested and go to jail for that kind of insurrection against the government. They're trying to peg him as an insurrectionist, that all he's trying to do is cause trouble. And even while they're twisting his words around, making him say things that he never said, Jesus doesn't say a word.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
I don't show my ignorance. They don't understand what he means. And he knows that, right?
I think that's probably one of the reasons why he's quiet.
But why? I know you don't like that word.
Why is a perfectly good question? I have no perfectly good answers. All I can do for a why question is speculate.
Because he knows ahead of time what's gonna happen to him.
Jesus knows what's going to happen. Jesus has known since the beginning of his ministry
Well, that's
exactly
why-
what was going to happen.
That's why he's not being clear with them about what the temple really is.
You'd think he'd break it down a little bit, in a little more detail. I agree.
I've
No, it's
always
like-
wondered.
Okay,
It's
you would
similar to the
think,
parables,
you would
right?
think that Jesus would do that,
It's tough.
but that's because we in those shoes would want to try to justify ourselves and get out of whatever is coming. And that's the difference. Jesus knows that he has been on this trajectory since his birth, that everything that he has said and done and experienced is leading up to this very moment.
Well, that answer, I mean, that's why then. Because even if he did explain it. Yeah, they're not gonna believe.
He could have spent a half an hour explaining to them that what he was talking about was his body, the temple, and he's looking forward to the destruction of Jerusalem in 30 or 40 years. He can see it in the future. But that's not going to make any difference. They've got it out for him, and he could say anything and everything right, and they would still find a way, because that's really what happens next. Jesus stays quiet. He does not say a word, like a lamb before its shears is silent. So Jesus did not open his mouth. That's elsewhere in the New Testament. Jesus doesn't say a word until they question his identity. They just get right down to it. Are you the Messiah? Yes or no? And his answer is, I am. And you will see the Son of Man sitting on the throne. Okay, so up until that moment, Jesus has been silent in front of Caiaphas and this massive group of accusers, interrogators. He has not had a word to say until they ask, are you the Messiah? Let's get it exactly right here. Are you the Messiah, the Son of the Blessed One? Blessed One. That is a way of saying God's name without saying God's name. A fancy word for that is circumlocution. You're going around it, but everybody knows what you're talking about. Are you the Son of God? Are you the Messiah? And to that question, Jesus does give an answer. I am, and you will see the Son of Man sitting at the right hand of the Mighty One and coming on the clouds of heaven. So here's what I think about that. If there was ever a moment to be quiet and to not speak the truth, it's that one.
If you were trying to get out of it.
If you're trying to get out of it. If it wasn't true, this is your exit ramp. Okay, everything that I've said and done so far, that's all bogus, and I'm caught, but I don't want to die for this because I made it all up, and so I'm out. No, I didn't mean it. It was all a joke. I was not telling the truth. I've been misquoted. There's anything that Jesus could have said. Are you the Messiah? No, that's crazy. Who told you that? But that's not the answer. The answer is, I am. He knows that if he answers affirmatively, that he is going to be found guilty of blasphemy. He is going to be punished for blasphemy. And the fact that he still gives this answer in the face of punishment and execution should cement for us the truth of it. Jesus, are you the Messiah? Yes, I am. And I'm prepared for whatever that will bring. Because who endures that kind of suffering and punishment for a lie or for a fairy tale? My dad has told me and my brothers since we were children that we can never be lost because we are part Apache. Can you tell by looking at me how much Apache I got? I've met Apaches. We bear no resemblance to one another at all. Now,
Have you been lost?
no,
It's proof.
only when I've tried to use GPS. That's the only time I've ever been lost. On the point of death, my dad is not going to say to the executioner, yes, I am Apache, because he knows it's not true, and it's the way to avoid death. I think that this answer ought to give, if somebody has got some doubts about what Jesus believed about himself, this right here ought to blow it away, because he is prepared to die for something that he says is true. Blasphemy always carried capital punishment. If you blasphemed God, you would be executed. Period. And he knows that's what's ahead. He makes comments about the Son of Man coming that has to do with his death and resurrection and ascension into heaven, where he will sit at the throne of God. He is borrowing language that comes from Daniel chapter 7, verse 13. Let's go look at it. That's not information I would share. Daniel chapter 7. Daniel is way back there.
Page 108.
Daniel chapter 7, verse 13. In my vision at night, I looked, and there before me was one like a son of man coming with the clouds of heaven. He approached the Ancient of Days and was led into his presence. He was given authority, glory, and sovereign power. All nations and peoples of every language worshipped him. His dominion is an everlasting dominion that will not pass away, and his kingdom is one that will never be destroyed. All the men in that room are familiar with Daniel's vision. They're the leaders of the people. They're the religious, theological geniuses of their day. Jesus says, you'll see the Son of Man coming in the clouds. Ow. He is making a claim to be not just a Messiah, but the Messiah from God who will sit on the throne and who will bring judgment. He's been the one who has been judged in the middle of the night by Annas first, and now by Caiaphas and the rest of the Sanhedrin. They're going to find him guilty, but at some point, he's the one who will sit in judgment over them. One other passage is included in that too. Go back to Psalms, book of Psalms, Psalm number 110. Psalm 110, verse 1. The Lord says to my Lord, sit at my right hand until I make your enemies a footstool for your feet. The Lord will extend your mighty scepter from Zion, saying, rule in the midst of your enemies. Your troops will be willing on your day of battle, arrayed in holy splendor. Okay. David's psalm has to do with that coming reigning king. Enemies will be a footstool for the Messiah. he will eventually judge them from the throne. And as you would imagine, these men are sent into outer space by what Jesus says. He has said, I am the Messiah. I did come from God, and I will sit in judgment over you. I'm the one who's going to come in the clouds. And the high priest begins ripping his clothes. Initially, originally, if you ripped your clothes, it was a sign of great grief and sadness. By the time that Jesus is around, the high priest would do that whenever he heard blasphemy. So this is just a sign that he knows that Jesus is speaking. He's claiming to be God, claiming to be the Messiah. And so he tears his clothes, and the group easily makes the judgment that Jesus is worthy of the death penalty. They hadn't been able to convict him of these lame-o quotes from before because they couldn't get the witnesses to agree. But right now, Jesus has said in the presence of the Sanhedrin was made up of 70 men. So it's probably at least that many men. I am the Messiah. I have come from God. And so they believe that he is guilty of blasphemy, which makes him worthy of the death penalty. Yes, Robert.
So no things translate different and the languages, but do you suppose that when Jesus said, I am, he was using the same words that we get I am from the Old Testament?
I have heard that before in going through this passage. When are you the Messiah? And all he says is, I am. I have heard it taught that Jesus is using that very short form of the name of God as well, which is one more reason why they would have accused him of blasphemy, because he was speaking the name of the most divine, and you're not supposed to do that. So it is a combination of lots of things. They're just done. And so because they all have heard with his own mouth this this what's the word I want? This confession. Thank you. This confession or profession that he is the Messiah. They all see that he is guilty, and so they all are in an uproar and they begin to attack him, spitting on him, yelling at him, beating him, kicking him, abusing him, right there in the middle of the trial. That is not the kind of trial we would expect to see. That sort of thing doesn't break out where the jury runs out of the jury box to attack the defendant. Now, I will say about this trial that it's wrong on a number of levels, but at least two. First of all, you couldn't have a trial in the middle of the night. It's against the law. And second of all, if you're going to have a death penalty, if you're going to sentence somebody to death, there had to be two corroborating witnesses, and that has not occurred. So this thing should have never taken place. Jesus is being falsely accused. He is being railroaded right to death. Any questions or comments or observations that you would like to make?
Go back to where you were referring to Jesus being silent. He had already prayed in the garden, let the will passed from him, so he had received his answer. There was no,
Yeah.
there's nothing more to be said.
If Jesus has prayed back in John 17 and back in the garden, that if there's some other plan, some other way, let's do that. But not your will, not my will be done, but yours. Then there really is no point in offering any kind of resistance. He has resigned himself to what is ahead. So, it's taken us weeks and weeks to do it, but in the course of just a few hours, he has gone from spending time in the temple courts on a Thursday, having a meal with the disciples in the upper room in the city of Jerusalem. Lots of talking, lots of last minute conversations, last instructions. They've walked across the Kidron Valley up to the Garden of Gethsemane in the dark at night, where he can be alone and pray. He has been found there by the Jewish leadership's mob. He has been marched across back the way he came, back into the city, where he has been on trial in front of Annas. And then he is drug bound to see Caiaphas and the Sanhedrin at the high priest's house. So that's there's a lot of turmoil going on in not very much time. And because it's taken us so long to go through the finer points and the details of it, maybe we've sort of lost that. But this is less than 24 hours. It's been less than 5.5 days since he rode into the city on the back of the colt, of the donkey, where everybody's waving branches and singing Hosanna to the Messiah, Hosanna to the King of Kings, blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. He's a hero. Everybody's ready for him to take the throne. And now he's being tried in the middle of the night over and over again, being falsely accused and unjustly acquitted, condemned. Sorry. Okay, so that's all really, really close time right there. It's not like it's been months and months since they announced that he was the Messiah as he came into the city. It's less than a week since it happened. Like from today back to whatever happened on our Sunday together here. Not that long.
You wouldn't think government could move that fast.
Well, it typically does not, thankfully. But I guess once they get their mindset on something, they do make it happen.
Maybe Jesus was silent because he just didn't want to drag it on out because they knew it was gonna happen anyway.
It's inevitable, so
Yeah.
why prolong it? Let's get to it. Yeah, maybe. All right, so all of this trial is taking place in the high priest's palace. It's got lower courtyard and upper rooms, and there's an archway you go through to become part of the courtyard, and there's a big fire in the middle, and Peter and probably John are there in the courtyard near the guards, which is kind of crazy to me that they're in the same place as the guys that they just ran away from. But Peter's there for sure, close to the fire. It's a spring night in Jerusalem. It's cool in the evening, so they've built a fire to keep everybody warm. And he is able, from where he is, the commentators that I read said he could watch in the window of the upper story room what was taking place. He could hear what was going on, and I would imagine that it was pretty noisy. You know, I know that my neighbors can hear me yelling at AJ from the other end of the block. It's not very hard to imagine that, you know, from the courtyard to the house, that you could hear all of this very angry, very heated, and then at the end, very abusive scene taking place. All right, then Matthew and Mark and Luke and John all get super similar. I don't even know how to go through all of it. So how should we do it? Well, I guess we'll start in John 18. John 18:15. Simon Peter and another disciple were following Jesus. Because this disciple was known to the high priest, he went with Jesus into the high priest's courtyard, but Peter had to wait outside the door. So that's a little different than what the others say, but not entirely opposite. The other disciple, who was known to the high priest, came back, spoke to the servant girl on duty there, and brought Peter in. Okay, so if we believe that it's John who refuses to name himself, somehow the high priest knows who John is. And so he's got like privileges to go into the courtyard. He is a known identity. But Peter is not, and he has to stay outside. The guard at the gate won't let him in. So John goes in, talks to the servant girl, and says, "Hey, that guy's with me. Is it okay if he comes in and listens too?" Okay, fine. So John says that Peter brings Peter in. John says that same servant girl says, "You aren't one of this man's disciples too, are you?" She asked Peter. Now, see, I hadn't really thought about that until this very moment. What that question says is curious. You aren't one of this man's disciples too, are you?
This is also,
Yeah, so,
She knows that John is.
yeah,
And so this doesn't seem like a very painful question. It's not like she's going to turn Peter over to the guards for immediate beatings and execution. She clearly knows that John is a follower of Jesus, and she's let him in. And the simple question is, are you one of the disciples too? I am not. We can go on and read there in verse 18. It was cold, and the servants and officials stood around the fire they had made to keep warm. Peter was standing with them, warming himself. Okay, so let's see here. Who has the best one? I guess we'll go back to Mark. Mark 14, verse 66. While Peter was below in the courtyard, which would indicate that Jesus and the Sanhedrin are above, one of the servant girls of the high priest came by. When she saw Peter warming himself, she looked closely at him. "You also were with that Nazarene Jesus," she said. But he denied it. "I don't know or understand what you're talking about," he said, and went on out into the entryway. When the servant girl saw him there, she said again to those standing around, "This fellow is one of them." Again, he denied it. After a little while, those standing near said to Peter, "Surely you are one of them, for you're a Galilean." He began to call down curses, and he swore to them, I don't know that man you're talking about." Okay, so 3 up, 3 down. A servant girl says, "Hey, you're one of them, right?" you're a disciple of Jesus, which may not have even been like an accusatory thing, just a statement of fact. You're one of the disciples, right? And Peter quickly denies it. Then it's either the same servant girl or a different servant girl comes along and makes the accusation a second time. You're with him, right? And Peter denies it again. And then the third time Peter gives the denial, they focus on his accent. The people in Jerusalem spoke differently than the people in Galilee did. Galilee would have been more rural, um, a little more rednecky, a little more common, something like that. I don't know. So it's like if somebody from New York City strolls into Atlanta, Georgia, and they go, "You're not from around here, are you? You're a Yankee." It's the same deal. Peter talks just like a guy from Galilee. I don't know what that sounds like, but they do. You're one of those Galileans that's been hanging out with Jesus, aren't you? Uh-uh. Dude, it's your accent, man.
Go back to like, I mean, how many times do you follow people around that you don't know? Like, well, what were you doing then? Like, why was that not the question? Like, well, then why are you hanging around with them if you don't know them and you're not
Exactly.
with them? Like,
Right.
duh.
I was just cold and saw a fire and thought maybe you guys had, were singing some campfire songs. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. That's a great question. Then why are you here?
There's also a big crowd, right?
Yeah, the courtyard is packed full of people.
Following from the witnesses, the council.
Leadership of the Jews, temple security force, and at least 2 little disciples. In addition to servants of the high priest who work and live there all the time. And it seems like those are the ones who easily identify Peter as a follower of Jesus, kind of no matter what he says.
Is this prophesied anywhere in the Old Testament?
Just Jesus. He's the one who predicted it a couple chapters ago, and during the Last Supper. Yeah, you say you'll go die with me, but I'm telling you what, Peter, before the rooster crows tomorrow, you're going to deny that you even know me 3 times.
Like, when he said that, did he have this like, why did I say that? Like, I mean, and then said, yeah, when the rooster crowed, he was like, oh, I did it.
Okay, so Luke throws something in here which is incredibly dramatic and makes for a great movie. I don't know what you're talking about. Just as he was speaking, the rooster crowed. The Lord turned and looked straight at Peter. Then Peter remembered the word the Lord had spoken to him before the rooster crows today, you'll disown me 3 times. And he went outside and wept bitterly. I mean, that is like, you couldn't write better cinema than that. You claim that your best friend in the world is going to betray you. He says, "No, I would never do that." Yeah, it's going to happen 3 times before the rooster crows. He's let off. He goes through these trials in the middle of the night. It's a long deal. He hasn't had anything to eat or drink since supper time. He hasn't had any sleep. Nobody's had any sleep. It's really emotional kind of a deal. Peter is there to figure out what's going to happen to his best friend, his mentor, his guru, the man he loves the most in the world. And somebody says, "Hey, you're with him, right?" And he gets afraid. Nope. They're dealing with Jesus up here in the upper chamber. No, I don't know him. No, I don't know this man you're talking about. I'm telling you, And he's cursing and swearing. I don't blankety blank blank know this guy. Maybe that's how they know he's in Galilee. He's got a potty mouth.
Seven's mouth.
And at that very moment, the rooster crows. Peter's looking up and he sees Jesus looking down at him while he's being beaten. I mean, that is so many kinds of tragic there.
That's an Oscar winning scene there.
Yeah.
Power.
And I don't know how Peter hasn't thought about this as he's been saying these things in the last half hour. But when Jesus and Peter catch each other's eye, then he goes, I can't believe I did it. I didn't want to do it and I did it anyway. I knew it was coming and I did it anyway. And he runs out of the courtyard and is weeping bitterly, sobbing because of this, the truth of the betrayal and the prediction. You can make whatever applications you'd like to about Peter's denial. There's probably lots of different ways that you can go. If somebody asks you if you're a follower of Jesus, well, or yeah, absolutely am. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to acknowledge Jesus. Jesus has already said, we've seen it. Whoever acknowledges me before men, I will acknowledge before my Father in heaven. Whoever disavows me, whoever denies me before men, I will deny before my Father. So don't do it. And that is all I have to say about that. What do you think?
This was all for money for Peter. Wasn't he given coins?
Judas was giving once.
Peter was-
Yeah, we're gonna catch up with Judas here in just a little bit. He's
We got
maybe by Christmas.
I'm enjoying.
But yeah, we'll come back and we'll see that whatever evil thing was planted deep in Judas's heart, he has remorse for and tries to give the money back and to stop it all. And it's too late. What else? Anything? It's hard to talk about this. It's hard to want to study it. But it's only gonna get worse before it gets better. All right then. Well, we'll wrap things up here. For anybody who happens to be watching on YouTube, you can always go back and watch some other stuff. I know there's some things missing. I'll try to get them caught up. Thanks for watching.